Hi again, Shelby.
Hi, Kyle.
How have things been since our last meeting?
Um, Not too bad. Just really busy with work and obviously school right now. Assignments are starting to pile up, so just kind of
Mhm.
managing that.
Okay, well, compared to when we last spoke, could you give me a bit of a rundown on how things have gone?
Mm-hmm. So I think last time we had talked, I had said that I hadn't gone out to this event. I sort of canceled last minute. But since then, I did go to one of my partner's performances, which was really good.
Mhm.
But it's just been a lot to manage with work lately. We've got a new client who's quite complex, so there's been more overtime than I would have anticipated, and just a lot more emotionally draining at the moment right now. So yeah,
Mhm.
I'm coming home pretty tired.
So there's a lot of overtime. Would you say you're understaffed at work at all, or?
Not really, not at all, actually. It's
Mhm.
no, the overtime is just more so. I guess our team is lacking the skills to deal with this client, and so it's a lot of like myself and other senior staff members kind of sticking around and providing that support for them. So sometimes we're doing the intervention. Most of the times, actually, we're intervening, but trying to do that teaching too, so that they can handle it on their own.
So what I hear is that you're looking to get some of the more junior staff to be able to handle some of these things on their own.
Yes,
Tell-
absolutely.
Can you tell me how that's going?
It's been really challenging. Staff are, it's this client has a really unique, I guess you could say, mental health issue, something that we've never seen before. Um, but it's,
Mhm.
but the behaviors like self harm, suicidality, like that stuff we've dealt with a lot. And
Yeah.
so it's really just trying to get them to realize like this isn't that different. It looks different, maybe it even feels a bit different, but you have these skills.
Yeah.
So
So
it's
have they dealt with suicidality and self-harm and those more typical things?
yeah, like a
Okay.
lot that's very common in our population that we work with.
I was gonna say it doesn't sound like something that would be novel at the kind of work you do.
No, no, not at all. But no, it's just this client just has a much more I guess you could say dramatic or kind of really obvious um, presentation with trauma, like really
Maybe
frequent.
histrionic might be a word.
Not even like it's actually I'm trying to figure out how much I'm allowed to say confidentiality wise, but basically it's multiple personality disorder.
Okay, yeah.
So just lots of like switching between parts, memory loss between parts, really
Hmm.
traumatic flashbacks, stuff like that.
Wow.
Yeah, so it is
That,
it is different.
yeah, it sounds a bit different.
hmm Yeah.
I think intimidating might be a word that would fit with something like that too.
Yeah, and I think that's a very good word because that's how a lot of the frontline staff are feeling, like they're scared almost to intervene or
Mhm.
they're terrified that they're going to say the wrong thing and it's like no, like
Well,
it's
just that kind of dissociative identity thing, that's also been really played up a lot in our culture. And it's
yeah.
something that isn't very common. It's something that can be very, you know, seem bigger than it really is.
Mhm. Yeah.
Hmm.
And it is ultimately it's a response to significant trauma.
Hmm.
And it's yeah. So it's sort of just managing that, like trying to help them get away from that sensationalized idea of it and just work with the person in front of
Yeah.
them.
This isn't the movie Split. This is,
Yeah,
you have the resources for this. Well,
exactly.
yeah. Yeah, I mean, it certainly does sound intimidating, but it certainly also sounds like something people can,
Mhm.
adapt their skill set to.
Yeah. Yeah, exactly.
So, in terms of getting this, so would you say, sorry, just trying to conceptualize what I'm about to say here. Would you say that this past few weeks has been significantly more stressful than what you've been finding at work?
Yeah, absolutely. Like it's a little bit closer to like that, like not burnout, but I can sense that if it keeps going at this rate, I will burn out.
Moving in that direction.
Yeah, yeah, exactly.
Well, that's really great that you recognize that too, and especially before you're actually burning out.
Hmm. Yeah.
Hmm.
Yeah. So,
So, what sort of things do you think can be done right now to kind of move that bearing of responsibility a little more evenly?
some of it has been me setting up boundaries,
Mhm.
really being more consistent with that. So, like, for example, the other night, a staff member just, kept trying to pull me into sort of every conversation, like just having to say no to this client was like, oh, can you come help me? And I was like, no, you can do it. And
And that was the first time you say you've done that?
not like the first time, but it was really like I tend to be a much more supportive, I guess you could say,
Yeah.
supervisor. So it's like, okay, what do you need? Let's talk it through. But this
Mhm.
time I was like, no, you know how to do this. Go do it.
Yeah. You gotta throw them in the deep end sometimes.
Yeah, yeah, exactly. And I would, and just for my own, like you said, sense of well-being, I kind of knew that if I don't start doing this, then I'm going to end up being completely burned out, and then they're not going to have me at all as a resource.
Hmm. And I mean, in terms of some of the other things that are contributing to how busy you are, I think we know that school is kind of is what it is, isn't
Yeah,
something that you can necessarily cut back on.
yeah, exactly.
And would you say there are any other factors that are kind of contributing to this, or would you say that work is the big one?
I would say it's definitely the biggest one right now. Um,
Okay.
yeah, it's the biggest one by far. And then, like you said, school, not much you can do about it. And I really like, I don't have a lot of social commitments outside of work and
Mhm.
school. So
Well, I mean, where's the time for that exactly?
yeah, yeah.
Do you think, in terms of what we talked about last week with those connections, it would be more beneficial to focus on the busyness at work right now and then kind of let that flow into the freed up time that will result from that?
That's kind of, I think, where, yeah, where it almost needs to happen, even if I don't want it to be that way. It's been helpful. Like my supervisor is really sort of pretty aware of where I'm at, and she knows that, that I'm hitting that point. And so she's even said to me, like, you need to go home or something like that. So I'm gonna try
Hmm.
to get Monday off, which will hopefully help me get on top of school stuff, but
Amazing.
it's a lot. Yeah.
Hmm. So I understand that you were saying, like, you're reaching that point where you might be burning out. It sounds like you've experienced something kind of similar to that before.
Yeah. Yep.
When was the last time you'd say you were at this point in terms of your stress load?
I would say last October, November. It was similar in that I had two courses going on, but at that time we went through a huge staff turnover, so we were very understaffed. So I was doing my job plus sort of being on the floor all the time managing youth, and so that, like, I hit that burnout point for sure.
Hmm. And how did you handle that burnout point?
I think like back then I just didn't know that. I don't know, like I sort of thought I was immune to it, which is kind of ironic considering how much we learn about it in school. But
Yeah.
just I really struggled to admit it when it finally hit me, and then I just got a lot more honest with my supervisors about my workload, about what I needed, and then it in a way it did kind of naturally resolve itself because we ended up hiring of the people that we needed. We got a full team, so that was
Mhm.
good.
Yeah. So, things going the way that they're going right now, how confident are you that those sorts of resolvements are going to be made this time around?
um it's, oh, that's a tough one. Like this at work right now, like I said, it's right now I'm just really trying to figure out whether with the staff that I have, some of them are great. It's by no means all of them, but
Yeah.
with one team in particular, it's like, okay, is this a learning, a confidence thing? Is that, or is it an actual, like, a capacity thing? Like, can these staff members do this?
Hmm.
And so that's kind of the big question, and if we did end up having to move them to a different program, or let them go or whatever, that would certainly create another kind of, I guess,
Oof.
yeah, right?
Yeah.
Then
Hopefully that happens in August.
right, exactly. Yeah. So
Okay.
I don't know. Yeah, we'll kind of see where that goes.
Hmm. And in terms of determining whether or not people are competent and they can do this job, is that something that's spread between you and other colleagues?
Yeah, yeah, it is. It's between myself and the program coordinator.
How
Um,
do you, yeah,
oh, go ahead.
sorry, how do you think those other people who are kind of in a similar position as you are doing in terms of their workload right now?
They're pretty overwhelmed.
Yeah, okay. So this is something that's not just you.
No, no, it's mostly the senior team, especially, yeah, the ones who are most closely involved with this client's particular case. That it's, yeah, the past 2 weeks have just been a lot.
Mm-hmm. Is it something that's kind of new for them too?
Yep, it is. I mean, and it's different, right? Like it's a super different mental health issue, but I think, like we're all pretty confident in our ability to manage the crises, but
Mm-hmm.
the crises that have happened so far have just been much more, I don't know, they just tend to go on a lot longer than other kids. It's not like you go up, you have the explosion, and then they kind of come back down and you can regulate them.
Yeah.
This one, it seems to just stay up there for a while.
Mm-hmm. Well, it sounds like you're also kind of developing your skill set a lot here and dealing with this a bit as well.
Oh, totally. I'm learning so much about, yeah, like you said, the dissociative identity disorder. And
Yeah, learning is so hard in this field of work, though. So,
yeah, and it's,
yeah.
learning in the moment on the spot. And it's like, okay, what if I say the wrong thing? And I have said the wrong thing, and that's fine. It's that repair.
Mm-hmm. Do the people under you have that fear as well?
I think so. Yeah. I think that's their biggest fear, right? Is,
Yeah.
screwing up, or what do I do if, those are the questions they get. What do I do with this? Or what do I do with that? And I'm like, well, what would you do with any client if that happened?
Yeah.
And, they know the answers, but because it looks different with this individual, it feels different for them.
Mm-hmm. How long do you usually like so say is the residential facility that you work at more long term or is it something more short? Oh, it's more long term. Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. It's our typical stays around a year.
Okay.
Yeah. Yeah.
And do people sort of see improvements as they kind of get used to being with you or?
It really depends on the client,
Mm-hmm.
to be honest. I find that the kids who have more like behavioral issues, you
Yeah.
really, the kids where it's more drug related, not so much. That's the,
Yeah.
that's the challenging one, right? And of course they're not going to see any improvements until they stop using.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah. So that's definitely, like, there's sort of that distinction, but with this client it's definitely just more strictly mental health for sure. So, but I mean, it's going to be a long road, like with dissociative identity disorder and the amount of trauma that this person has gone through. It'll be a long road for them.
Mm-hmm. So what would you say you need from your, sorry, I'm going to go a different direction than that. It
Hmm.
sounds like you've already done a few things that can help spread this workload a bit and help you. Do you think there's anything else that you've been thinking about doing or that's coming up in the back of your mind that might help you set some of those boundaries a bit more firmly or unload some of that?
Yeah, like I think it's even just a couple of little things. Like, sometimes I always forget to turn my work phone off. I just throw it in my bag on my way home and leave it on. And then I'll
Yeah,
get calls or something. And so, now it's probably going to be like, okay, get in my car, turn it off right away.
yeah.
Then yeah, then it's not, I'm not getting bombarded or,
Hmm.
getting a frightening text message and then being like, oh my God, what's happening at the program?
Yeah, sometimes when you're kind of working with something like that too, part of you almost wants to go in and stay a bit longer and do more things just so you're in control of more of it.
Yeah, exactly. And,
Mhm.
and I feel like I can do it, but that doesn't mean I should.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It's causing more trouble than it's probably solving by,
Yeah, exactly. Like it can't always be me. I'm not always going to be there. And this ultimately, that's not going to serve this client if I'm the only one that they have a good relationship with.
hmm
So,
So in terms of coping with a lot of these feelings of being overwhelmed, have you been making time for yourself and time with your partner?
That one has been challenging. Like I know tonight we have a plan to go out, which will be good. But it's,
Okay.
yeah, I know, right? But he just started school too this week. So
Mm-hmm.
he's a bit overwhelmed too. So that's, yeah. So I think it'll take a little while because he's never been in school since we've been dating. So
Yeah.
for us to figure out what that's going to look like.
Going to be a big adjustment, but I mean, he has you who's been doing it for ages and is balancing it with one hell of a job as well. So I
Yeah, exactly.
feel like some strategies can be taught there
Yeah.
as well. Goodness, you're teaching people in all areas of your life, aren't you?
Right. Yeah.
Mhm.
So that's, I know that that's going to have to be a priority though moving forward. Like I can really feel myself feeling a bit disconnected and kind of like not
Mhm.
anxious, but just that uneasy feeling. So
Yeah,
yeah, I need to make time to actually, sit down and have a conversation and figure,
yeah.
just
Now, the one challenge in going for a lot of these sessions with you, I find, is just that you're already so competent and self-aware that you've implemented already of the thing, a lot of the things that one might brainstorm with a client when they're looking for solutions. You're setting those boundaries with the people that you work with. You're speaking to your supervisors. You're learning about things that have been similar in the past and applying them to the situation. And, we came up with another one, turning off your work phone. But one thing I'm curious about is, how hopeful are you that this overwhelming stage is just a temporary thing that you just kind of have to muscle through?
to be honest, that's a tough one. Like I think I'm not like I want to say, oh yeah, I'm hopeful it'll be great, but I'm not
Yeah.
100% there.
Hmm.
Like, it's maybe like a 65, 70% hopeful.
Okay. Well, tell me where some of that doubt comes from.
Um, so like, with work, it comes from the fact that, like I said, I know this is going to be a very long road. With this particular client and just managing the program, like as we have new intakes coming in, all the dynamics change. Like it's the kind of job where it never gets to a place where you feel like, okay, we got it, we know what we're doing, because it's
Yeah.
always changing. So like, a part of me knows that and has that realistic expectation.
Hmm.
I think with my partner, there's, personally, there's more just that fear of, okay, he's doing school, I'm doing school, we got to manage this financially, we've got to manage our schedules. So there's just, I think that's the piece that's probably a little bit bigger at this moment is, okay, how do we manage this change?
Hmm. How long has your partner been in school?
He just started this week, and it's like
Mhm.
about a 4-month program that he's doing.
Yeah.
Yeah, so it's pretty brief, and so in that regard, I know it's just going to be temporary. But
Mhm.
yeah, but it's just in the meantime, how do we stay connected? So
Yeah. So,
yeah.
and I mean, if you just started this week, you haven't really had any anecdotal, okay, we can manage this, and you haven't exactly, your anxiety hasn't had a chance to be proven wrong, I guess I should say.
No, exactly. Yeah, like it's still so unknown and it's so new.
Hmm. And when you do you, where does your mind kind of go when you have these negative thoughts?
Um, I would say that it goes more towards hmm, like kind of the thought around worst case scenario kind of thing. Like,
Yeah.
not catastrophizing in that I'm blowing it out of proportion, but I do sort of have that like, oh my God, what this is, what would happen if this, or those what ifs, I
Yeah.
guess. Yeah.
Those what ifs are so scary. And when, people think when you get involved in psychology that they get better, you just almost think of worse things.
Right.
Yeah.
Exactly. That's not true.
Hmm. How have you been communicating with your partner about some of these worries you have about him having a crazy schedule now as well?
To be honest, I haven't. Like this, like you said, this week it just first started, and I don't think I really anticipated how I was going to feel. So
Mhm.
I haven't had that conversation with him yet, and I think that's probably why, more than anything, I'm feeling that uneasiness is because I know I need to have it. And
Okay, well, that's a big, giant,
yeah,
obvious thing that you can do to get some of that out of the way.
exactly.
Is he usually pretty reassuring when you come to him with these what ifs and anxieties?
He usually is, yeah, and he's usually pretty self-reflective too, to be able to say, "Yeah, you're right, I need to do this," or he'll tell me something that would be helpful. So that, yeah, like I know these conversations go well. They're just not comfortable.
Yeah, they're not fun conversations at all.
No,
Being vulnerable is hard, but I mean,
exactly.
it's also kind of nice having somebody you can be vulnerable with.
Yeah, and I always say to myself, I'm like, well, if you expect clients to be vulnerable, you better be able to do it too. Yeah.
Okay, well, that's a big one. So
Mm.
I think that's a big chunk of the some of your anxiety that you can do something tangible with. What
Yeah.
about the worst case scenarios that happen when you're thinking about work?
Like I said, it's like people quitting, other
Oh God.
people, right? Like other people going on leave, and then now suddenly I'm like managing my stuff, and then also having to work the floor. So it's just like,
Mhm.
oh my God. Yeah. So that's more so the fear.
Yeah, and I mean, if things start going in that direction and you still hit those, I can't work more than this amount a week, I can't do more than this, what happens at work?
Um, I think it's not like I couldn't say, like, "This is too much for me." I know I could, but
Yeah.
there's such a piece of me, and it's something that I need to really figure out and work with that, like, sort of thinks that because I have the capacity to, that I should. And so that,
Yeah.
yeah, right? Like, I'm not someone who gets easily overwhelmed,
Hmm.
and I'm someone who is comfortable working with tough clients. And so it's sort of like, well, do I put myself in that position, or do I expect the other staff to put in that to do that? And then what if it all goes sideways and it ends up hurting the client in the end?
Yeah, and that's something that's so I feel like it's really common in counselors is that there's such that sense of empathy, and you are so skilled at empathizing with other people that you can easily take on a lot of what they're going through.
Yeah.
People be struggling like your client is, and you immediately see a way to fix it, taking on more work, and you do it without maybe second guessing on how it might impact yourself.
Yeah. And
Hmm.
that's definitely something that, I mean, and luckily my supervisor is aware of that. And I even said to her, like a few days after this client came to the program, I was like, I need you to watch me, and I need you to tell me when I'm in it and when I need to back off. So,
Yeah.
having those checks and balances is good, but
Hmm.
yeah.
Well, I think it's great that you recognize all of those things. I think in terms of work, you already have the things in place that you need to move in the right direction. And, we had that discussion about the big conversation to have with your partner. So I think that would be a great place to leave it.
I agree. Thank you again.
Oh, you're welcome. And thanks for, taking the time to tell me these things.
Okay, thanks, Kyle.